gentlemen, we are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve, so you can take this information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. I'm going to jump right in, you guys. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And this guy who's joining me today is one of my favorite individuals out there, because as we both like to say, we're saying the exact same message. We just start at different areas and we always arrive at the exact same conclusion. So with that being said, I have my good friend, Mr. Jim Kenny, back on the show today. Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to join me to talk about a topic we are both very passionate about.
Chris, thanks for having me. And I love the intro. We have some of the best discussions, and we almost always get back to the exact same place. So I am really pumped up about sales integration discussions. So where would you like to start, buddy?
No, I think we'll start with kind of something that internally we're going through right now inside of my brokerage. And it's like, we have our ideal customer profile. We know where the direction that we're going, but I still felt that we are casting too wide of a net in trying to get after who we're trying to prospect. Because, ultimately, the more and more I think about it, my business has a great core group of customers, but we want to grow and scale, and we need another level of shipper to get there. And I've worked with them in my career, so it's the ones that go between that 250 to 750 annual full truckloads, that those are the ones that I need to start targeting for that consistency aspect of things.
Well, I'm going to remember how we start from different spaces. And you always tease me and say, Jim, I will ram my head against the brick wall 25 times if I have to. And I said, that's because, your strategy, there's gold on the other side, versus the guys who hit their head against the brick wall 1,000 times and they didn't think about what's on the other side or how to get there. So all teasing aside, there's been a lot of major research in the last 6 to 8 months on blogs. And if you look at McKinsey, for example, Bain, BCG, a lot of the big consulting groups, Salesforce integration is a big deal in a nice fancy way. You and I call it that. And the modern thing is, well, what's your tech stack? And it really, if you're talking about sales tech stack, and I haven't forgot your question at all, It really comes down to 3 things. Okay, you have predictive analytics, okay, which is basically, that's the robot algorithms that help you forecast your sales with greater accuracy. Okay, and that's great. If you're a big firm, you can't not be doing this. Okay, but remember, thousands of firms aren't there yet, and that's fine. Number 2, it's just generative AI for productivity. And those are tools that really help make you more efficient. And we can't ignore those. And then finally, it's what I call conversational intelligence, or the industry calls CI. And that's basically tools that record and analyze and make your calls better. So if we break each of those down, back to what you're saying is, your problem still can't be solved by AI. You're looking at, what is my best target market? Then you break that target market down to your niche, and then everybody's really cool. I was teasing Mike Riccio not too long ago about everybody's ideal customer profile. I said, yeah, it's old guys in marketing, we call those niches. So really what you're doing is something that an AI system doesn't do. What AI systems really do on the sales integration side are, and where they're most valuable, I cannot tell you how amazing this stuff is their predictive analytics, their productivity or their efficiency tools, and their CI or their conversation intelligence. But before that, Chris, what you're saying is, as a business owner, as that brokerage owner, because you see it in your data. So you can throw that data into there and you can get all the analytics you want, and it will tell you but you're working the business. So what I try to tell people is, okay, before you use any of this stuff, and I pulled this from your notes, Chris, from our April's, when you're up there. You said, guys, I'm telling you, I love this, but you're the one who knows where your business wants to go. You're still setting the strategy as the owner. You're still saying, this is the markets I want to go after. So before you move that first load or you really get going, you got to know, where do we excel or what do we want to do? So if you don't know what your niche or, ideal customer profile is, you're in big trouble. So now go back to your question, what you're talking, that I've rambled all that academic geeky stuff. For your business, we need to be 250 minimum, 750. Here's how we grow and scale within our business. So now, if you want to use those tools, that's great. But prior to that, okay, you got to do it on your own. And I'm struggling when I ask somebody, well, what is it? How many times have you heard this in your coaching, Chris? So I'm going to ask you a question. How many times have you said, all right, let's figure out what you do best. What do you want to do? Oh, I move freight. I can move anything. How do you feel when you hear that, Chris?
I feel like it's a company that's lacking direction. Like, to be honest with you, Jim, because I understand the philosophy behind that, because back in the day, that was the way it was, right? Hey, we're going to go after anything and everything that's out there. And I think 10, 15, 20 years ago, that was a winning strategy. But I feel like when you drop a bunch of technology and data and information out there in today's market, and this is where I think a very large threat is to a lot of companies out there that they can't even see on their roadmap is people are getting more and more refined in how they want to onboard providers. And that spray and pray methodology now goes back to an emotional connection of COVID, when those people were like, hey, we can do everything. And then all that freight was there sitting on the docks, and all these shippers are like, I thought you said you could do this. What's going on?
Right. So the same thing. But if somebody says, hey, Jim, okay, we excel, okay, at freight management. That is our differentiating tactic. So if you're a $4, $3, $5, $7 million broker or an $800 million broker, if you know what your differentiation point is, knowing that then leads moving to all this other cool stuff. But if you go to chase the cool stuff and you still have an unbelievably unorganized set of target markets, and you say, well, the system will help find that. But if your guys are continually chasing everything, then your systems are never going to find and identify and take advantage. So your predictive analytics doesn't work. So let's flip it. Somebody comes to me, just had this discussion, and they wanted to expand. I'm like, you guys look at your freight breakdown, okay? 67% of your business is a reefer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why aren't you dropping your LTL dry offering? Why aren't you doing? And they're like, no, we're making money there. I said, X amount of capital expenses going into this, and you're getting Y. And then it dawned on them. I said, why aren't you chasing, okay, the trade associations, the groups that do refrigerated freight in your target market, and don't be going after firms this size because you're not large enough, and don't go after this size. It's the exact same thing. You can slice that, then use your predictive analytics, the generative AI. And by the way, not that I discount those tools. Hey, for your viewers, here's something everybody should watch. It's a boring interview. It's not real engaging, but if you can get through about 25 minutes, go to YouTube and Google Eric Schmidt interview. He's a former CEO of Google, and he talks about how people underestimate AI this time. And it is so clear, and you've actually touched on a couple of the points today. And he does point out, unless you're very clear about what you want it to do and help you, you're still going to struggle, which is one of the biggest things about AI. We're not getting the efficiency we want.
Yeah.
Did you go through the implementation steps appropriately? And the answer is almost always what they talk about is no. But can the tools do it if you do it right? The answer is yes. And so,
Yeah, I mean, Jim, I talk about this often. You can have all the technology in the world, but if you have shitty processes, you just have now automated your shitty processes, is
yeah.
all it boils down to. And it's like I look at it is, you know, we're in a very we've been in an interesting time here in the industry because there's a lot of great technology that's being released out there, but I feel like there's more FOMO out there than anything because you know the majority of the conversations that I have, and again I say this often, the beauty of why people listen to the show is I'm doing the job that they do, right? Like I'm not a former anything. I am a guy who's in the trenches building up their business, and I have yet to meet a shipper or a prospect who's hit me with, I need your tech stack before we can go any further. Like that's an afterthought for most people.
Okay, so let me help you out here. You said you don't know that. I'm going to read you something real quick that I pulled from a blog. It's McKinsey and Company, big consulting company, and there's some research data. And they're basically talked about, here are the 7 steps, okay, to sales integration or this tech stack. Number 1, okay, the discovery and strategic planning. Okay, that has to take place without your tech stack. Okay, and part of that is, okay, you have to know what your market is and what you're doing, right? Surprise, surprise. Okay. Number 2, okay, data preparation and migration from your existing stuff into there. So if you haven't clarified what your market is, you're just, what they point out is you're just moving, okay, your garbage from an antiquated system. And a bigger problem, just what you said, Chris, is now you're putting very unclear data or records into a high-tech system, which is just going to accelerate the confusion and the chaos. So when you say that, again, coming from the 2 different directions that we talk about, there's evidence. So the 3rd step that they talk about on this is so fun. Clarifying everybody's role in that process and seeing who's going to do it. And so all 3 of those are done before that tech stack gets going.
Yeah.
The first one is we use different words, but the funny thing is we get the same way. So as a thought to me, you will be integrating technology. You cannot pursue in the future without it. So
Correct.
Everybody go watch Schmidt. Okay? But if you do not have a very clear plan of what your firm's strategic differentiating variable is, okay, you're just automating chaos under an old, less automated system. So that's not really a good strategy for success, is it, Chris? And that's just creating hell. So
yeah. No, I agree with that, Jim. And you know, so it's like if we're talking about structure, we're talking about processes. What is something that most organizations that you, because like, you know, for the audience out there who doesn't know, not only is Jim a longtime professor out there, he's also a longtime highly sought after consultant inside of the transportation space. And he works with companies nonstop about what we're talking about here, you guys. And that's developing a sales system, because at the end of the day, I feel like most organizations, and I'm guilty of this, right? Like I want to be abundantly clear, you guys, when I speak and I say people or most organizations, I will always put mine at the front of the list here because I've made this mistake where you are just more chasing revenue than in any revenue at all costs. And naturally that comes from when you start with nothing and you have no customers, you're so desperate to get customers. And then once you get customers, you keep that strategy going and then you start spinning your wheels. So from my seat, Jim, what is something that most organizations miss in like actually developing a scalable process?
Okay, so the first one, we've already talked about it twice, okay? And I just completed this project for somebody, guys. So here's an example, okay? We looked at it and I said, we're going to narrow this down, okay? Where is our greatest revenue? So we just looked at the data like anybody else would did our own analytics, okay? So 67% comes from reefer, okay? Mm-hmm. Truckload, LTL, and some warehousing work, okay? So you put that together, and you say, all right, how big is that market? Okay. So I'll make up these numbers here for professional. Yeah. Let's say that this firm's doing $100 million, so we can round the numbers. All right. Of that 165 they're doing. Okay. So we're going to keep the 65 because we like that revenue. Okay. But every application of technology is going to only include that 100 million. Okay, so we automated digitally at this point our communications. It's 60, 30, 15, and 5 days before trade shows, but only to that reefer freight business. Okay, second, okay, we took the data and we made sure that they were doing at least 50 million in revenue, okay, and less than 750 million. We knew where the sweet spot was because of 67%. So again, the front end work of just what you said, okay, who are my best pieces? So there's guys, well, there's more than that. I'm like, all right, so let's think about this, okay? At what point do you dominate an industry? Well, what do you mean? I said, you're doing $100 million or frozen, okay? The industry, okay, is 37 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So 100 million divided by 37 billion means you're doing 0.00025. So you're doing 25 thousandths of 1%. Is this a discussion you really want to have with me? And there's your point, Chris, which we started the show about your 250 to 750. Once you know that, okay, then we're disciplined to say, all right, we're automating, but only to this target market. So the second thing becomes, okay, not only do you do it, then you automate and be disciplined about it. We didn't automate the sales process. We automated the marketing process because that allowed us to reach a greater number of leads within that very defined set. And then the salespeople can now be disciplined. So you're cleaning up the leads, okay? Before that, they're just records. So if you really want to change something, okay, be disciplined about who you want as a customer. Second, be very disciplined and automate, okay, the communication processes to those folks. Okay, so this firm, do they need automatic dialers yet? Do they need, okay, bots to answer the phones and operations? They can certainly do that stuff. Okay, but the actual part of selling, okay, we automated, okay, our communication and outreach. Okay, we use AI on that for hitting the target market once we knew what it was. So if you're in your market, that the people you work with typically are much smaller, okay, then you say, well, where's my cost? Okay, so you go back to the P&L and it's labor. Okay, we don't want to use firm names, but let's say you use somebody who can automatically make your appointments. That's probably a more valuable buy than a marketing or sales tech stack that might cost you $8,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know your target market, you've automated that communication, Chris. Your guys are hitting us with the phones and they know. Then let's save in the operations side because your transaction cost, okay, you shipper pays you $3,000 for load. Okay, you pay the carrier $2,700. It thinks $300. Well, if your transaction cost is $185 per that trade versus 105 or 95, okay, you get the competitive advantage. So the last thing to really think about is maybe before, and I'm a marketing guy, and it's maybe your automation might be in operations because you get a greater ROI. Do you see what I'm saying? So,
100%.
Because you and I are sales guys doesn't mean everything has to go to us. Sometimes it's just the efficiency of the whole business. So step back, okay, take your myopic view glasses and look at the whole elephant, not just the tail or the trunk or the gate. So those are the basic kind of things that you and I have talked about. In fact, when we presented in at our last CI meeting, but you tell your audiences, you got to look at all aspects of the business when you talk about the tools of AI. And maybe, I use that as an example, maybe that automated appointment scheduling software will get you a much greater return and a greater reduction of your transaction costs than automating something on the sales side.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I personally think, at least for a little bit of our strategy is we're going to automate as much operations as we possibly can. And that is where I don't ever want to automate the facing aspect of things. And for me, it's like customer facing, carrier facing. I don't necessarily want to automate that yet. That could change, and again, all of my opinions, you guys, are fluid because they can change in time. I'm not set in stone. This is the way that we're going to always do this. But I feel like right now in the short term, operationally, you're talking about appointment setting, automating that. Like I will drop their name. I've had them on the show before. Q'd, Tom and them. They've been on the show before.
I love Tom and Prasad.
Yeah. And Jim, from my perspective, if you have that high volume shipper that requires multiple TMSs for the receivers to go in and schedule delivery appointments, that is a natural spot where that is a bottleneck because, again, looking internally, operationally, load building, other things like we use Revenova for our TMS. They have a phenomenal load cloning option that comes along with it that helps us expedite that. But from our perspective, that still takes time, right? And it's like I'm looking as when we're bootstrapping and trying to do dollar for dollar, where do we automate? Where do we want to implement AI? It's all operationally focused because that will take more time. And that time can be spent on revenue generating activities.
By the way, so the AI operations, I am not against bots at all. In fact, I love them. Okay. There's no reason in your operations team that if you're building and growing, you can't test inbound calls. Okay. And they check on it. Your bot handles that. Okay. Will your bots be doing your outbound sales calls to your shippers? Probably not at this point, especially as a smaller firm. But the more you integrate along through the operations, so I see, again, the whole concept of predictive analytics, conversational, and there's some really cool stuff, and it moved faster than I thought. I'm a big believer in automating as possible. So let's look at some math, okay? So if you use things like, since we've dropped them, it's clear in that, and you mentioned people, highway and Q'd and stuff, you do those kinds of things that help you. So if I'm an operations guy on the desk, okay, I can now move, 17 loads a day with automation versus 7.
Mm-hmm.
That's a gold mine. Therefore, my salespeople, if they have a clearly defined, where they've used analytics, and gone through, then we know exactly where that target market is. And we're only communicating with that target market, and that's who gets into our database. Then our salespeople are not wasting, and our marketing people are not wasting through automated systems, contacting leads that don't fit with our business. So the value comes from the operations side up, and then clearly, automating through. So are there value in things with CRMs? And I said, absolutely. How could you operate your business today without a good CRM? I mean, that's just insane.
Mm-hmm.
So those kinds of things that you're absolutely correct. One of the things I really do like about, when we talk about generative AI, here's 2 ways to think about it. The positive is efficiency. The negatives we talk about is creating generic communication. But if you know exactly who your target markets are, your niche, and then your ICPs, and you're really very clear about states, lanes, locations, firm size, volume, all that kind of stuff, Q codes, that once you have that, you automate the hell out of it. That's where the gold really takes place. So the automation then helps your reps have more productive calls because they're talking to more like-minded prospects. That's the gold. But if you don't do that beforehand, then you've just automated, like we talked about 7-8 minutes ago, you're just automating chaos. And that's never a good thing. Yeah, oh, we got a chaotic situation, Chris, so let's do this. Let's just make it faster and more chaotic. That's always a good solution to growing a business, But man, once you're clear on that, then automation takes out. So I do like conversational intelligence or CI tools to be tested on the operations side for inbound calls. Okay, that's a great place to start. Those tools keep getting better and better. I haven't seen anything that's just really got me doing handsprings on the outbound sales side. I have seen some good AI stuff on the outbound communication side in terms of automating systems. Okay, there's no doubt about that. And the predictive analytics of your system if you have the right database in your system. So, but again, those are human decisions before the automation decision, Chris.
Because it's like I hear you talking about a lot of this stuff out there, and like I look at like the overall freight broker market as a whole here, and we're talking, just there's like 27,000 active freight brokers that are out there. And if you look at it, the top 1,000 brokerages, which are like 3% of the market, contribute to like 90% of the revenue that is generated out there. So we're looking at 90% of the market.
It's higher. It's probably 95.
Okay. But so again, then we're looking at 95% of the active freight brokers out there generate $1 million or less a year as a whole. And
absolutely.
So we're at that point. And if you're in that situation, you got to go back and listen to what Jim's talking about here and compare it to what your daily outreach actually looks like. Because ultimately, and this is why it's not sexy. A lot of the topics I talk about are not sexy, you guys. It's not going to get a ton of engagement on social media because it's effective, though. Like, this is the stuff that I apply inside of my business. If you want to think behind the scenes, what goes through my head all day long, outside of how do I stay financially responsible to keep my business alive? Because when you bootstrap, you don't have a war chest of capital right away. You're trying to make it work. But number two is how do I become so productive with my time that if I'm going to make 40, 50, 60 calls a day, I'm calling the right 40, 50, 60 companies out there that fit inside of my ICP, as opposed to just casting a net and then getting in the air quote in the door with the shipper who adds you to a list. And then you find out you're bidding with 30 other brokers to move one full truckload in a week. And that's where you're consuming the majority of your time and your thought process, right? So it's like you can just become a little bit more refined with your daily operations to go deeper inside of who you're going after. Like, I feel like when you look at that, right? And like when most people see that, Jim, they're like, the top 1,000 or whatever, like 95% of the market. I look at that is where my greatest opportunity is for growth, because I know, and we can get deeper on this on a later episode, complacency, arrogance, all of those other things start to come in. But I feel like the majority of us out there, and when I say majority, I am putting myself at the front of the line. I got to become more refined, more targeted in who I'm going after, because
that's where
I got to get over the hump.
So that's beautiful. Okay. If you're that disciplined, then the technology is gold.
Mm-hmm. No, that's exactly it.
The discipline that's missing to get there. Okay. So what you're really talking about is leveraging data and AI, okay, ensure user adoption. Leveraging data and AI, and that data comes from knowing that target market so well, that ICP, then you can accelerate the business. So those firms, those top 150, 200 firms, okay, that's what they're doing to grow. But they did what you already said, was they know who it is they want to chase. Okay? Very specific. And they're not chasing businesses that aren't doing 50 million or higher, 100. They don't want that, okay? That automation is so expensive. They're chasing, now what I see is enterprise, okay, they're not going after it. If they're not getting 10,000 loads or more a year, I know a large number of firms, we're not even looking at that business. It's not in their ICP. Yeah. It's just not, Chris.
I mean, and just to think, you guys, what Jim said, the reefer market alone is 37 billion with a B dollars, and $100 million operation, which everyone would kill to have $100 million business or even a 50 or a $20 million business. Like, I think the most insulting thing that I hear out there the most, Jim, is when people are like, oh, it's only a $10 million brokerage. Go build it then. Go build a $10 million brokerage and tell me it's only that. But again, it's like to kind of tie it all in there, man. Like you said, that is why you don't need to go out and chase endless leads that are out there, because $37 billion, like even if you got it up to $1 billion, you're still at
that's not the whole market. I just gave you parts of that.
For sure.
Yes.
But just I'm just trying to put that into context, Jim. Like I feel like I'm talking against a brick wall when I try and tell people, like, you don't need to be as diverse as you think out there. Like, if you're just going to do full truckload, I get that. I can respect that. Like, hey, dry reefer, flatbed, full truckload, that's our jam. I can understand that. But if you're ultimately trying to build something and to really get in the wheelhouse of things, you don't need to offer much, is what I'm trying to get at. You need one core service offering.
And you need to do it really, really well.
For a very long time. Before you even start to get noticed by your customers, because picking up on time and delivering on time is your literal job. That's like giving McDonald's a high five because they made a hamburger, like that's their core offering.
Absolutely. Chris.
Well, Jim,
wrap it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like Brad said in the comments, man, we Jim and I could go for like 3 hours. And the thing is, you guys, if you guys want to hear more from Jim, reach out to him and connect, but he speaks at the TIA all the time. So if you guys are at Capital Ideas or stuff like that, Jim is constantly putting on stuff out there. So sign up for his stuff at his events. So, but other than that though, Jim, how does anybody reach out to you though directly?
Just go find me on LinkedIn. It's James Kinney, K-N-N-Y, and you can find me Professor Emeritus, which is a fancy name for retired professor, and work exclusively with 3PLs. And again, Chris, thanks for having me. I love when we get together, and I love doing programs with you at TIA and interviews. So as always, I look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Perfect. Appreciate it, Jim. Thank you so much. And I know you guys got value in this one. Make sure you subscribe and share the show, you guys. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the back. Hey, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane